Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher yishanu mitzvotav, v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah, la'asok b'divrei Torah, la'asok b'divrei Torah, la'asok b'divrei Torah, la'asok b'divrei Torah. Okay, so while we're passing
Got lucky.
stock around,
I don't have any ones.
so an email went out this evening. We have we're a temple that does Talmud and tobacco. And now we're a temple that's also going to do Shabbat and shooting.
I saw that.
Yeah, we saw that.
So if you are interested in getting a concealed carry permit, we're doing firearm safety. You need to respond to the email appropriately so that we're going to have covered 6 do this and there's some training, and 16 hours of training. We'll get this.
Do we have to have a gun already, or will we be able to?
Okay, so you cannot apply for a permit if you do not own a gun.
Okay.
However, you don't have to, I talked to Chief Jeremy. The answer is you can rent a gun to figure out which one feels best for you.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, so if we come to this class, we can rent it then?
Well, not this class, this is in Talmud, but yes.
You don't really need to come for this.
I'm just taking the money. Who's going to give this to somebody?
I will, because I
Okay,
need to
fabulous.
add it to this tiny amount.
All right, so. Karen, you're going to feel like this is old news.
I'm gonna so much enjoy hearing it again because it really twisted my mind around last week.
Okay, so when I was a young man, many moons ago, long,
Shut up.
I thought that Talmud was for old men who had too much time on their hands. I now believe it has the secrets of the universe, which means either I am an old man with too much time on my hands, or it has the secrets of the universe. Both are possible. What is Talmud? The word Talmud literally means you will learn or you will study. That's what the word means. Okay? It comes from the root gomet, you'll learn. So it's called the Torah Sheba'al Peh, the Torah of the master, the oral master, the master of the mouth. And Talmud is the oral Torah. We have the written Torah, the first 5 books that we've studied, and then we have the oral Torah. Okay? What is it? So you asked a great question about it. What is this? When was it? So when God goes to Moses and he says, I want you to write down the Torah. Okay? And we're going to let Alex play God because he's used to it. And Fiona's going to be Moses. And Alex, and God says to Moses, Moses, write down, you shall remember the Sabbath. So Moses writes down, you shall remember the Sabbath. And Moses says, God, what does that mean? God says, do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this. But in the Torah, the written Torah, it just says, you shall remember the Sabbath. Got it? But all that is expressed in terms of being, it's told to Moses orally. And the first line of Pirkei Avot says it all. Moses received the Torah from Sinai and transmitted it to Joshua. Joshua to the elders to the prophets, and the prophets transmitted it to the men of the great assembly. Okay? That's where it came. So it was passed down in oral tradition. Now, here's what ends up happening. Rabbi Karen walks in and Rabbi Orlando walks in. Actually, that's not true. They don't walk in. A woman walks in and she says, can I move a bottle of water on the Sabbath more than 6 inches if it's more than half full? Because I don't want to break the law. And Rabbi Karen says, well, I learned from my grandfather, who learned from his grandfather, who learned from his grandfather, who learned from his grandfather, who learned from Joshua, who learned from Moses, you can't. Rabbi Orlando says, well, I learned from my grandfather, who learned from his grandfather, who learned from his grandfather, who learned from Joshua, who learned from Moses. You cannot. And then we all sit around and we argue about it. Okay? And ultimately we side with Rabbi Orlando, we side with Rabbi Karen, or my favorite word, which I say it in semi-sarcasm, teku, which means we have no idea the Messiah will tell us when he shows up. But it's usually we side with one or the other. Now, when we have conversations are non-linear. Our brain does not think in a linear form. We try to make the world work, and A leads to B, leads to C, leads to D. But that's not how our brains work. That's not how conversation works, right? So what starts out as a conversation about a movie ends up being a conversation about winds and strings and something entirely different, right? What starts out as a conversation about a library ends up being about Mexico. Okay? That's how we talk. That's how we think. We do not think linearly. We think non-rational. Rational minds go A to B to C to D. That's rational thinking. Irrational is just all over the map and there's nothing. Non-rational, there's a flow. Okay? If you try to understand the Talmud rationally, you will break your teeth. That's the phrase that's used. Cut your teeth and break your teeth. If, on the other hand, you treat it like a symphony or a dance, then it flows and it's beautiful. Everyone with me so far? When you have a question, pop it in. All right. Now, structurally, there are two aspects of the Talmud, the Mishnah and the Gemara. The Mishnah, so we have all these dialogues that go on with the men of the Great Assembly, the Son Heavy. The Mishnah is done by Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, Judah the Prince. And he writes down what a lot of these dialogues said. And that's called the Mishnah, or Second Torah. And then the additional parts of the dialogues are called the Gemara. Structurally, Mishnah plus Gemara equals Talmud. Everyone with me so far? Okay, it's not that complex, right?
Not a bit.
By the way, this is what Talmud looks like. This is a page, and here is what really is the text, and over here you have Rambam and different commentators and Rashi. And just this part, it typically takes 4 or 5 pages in English to translate. Okay, which is why it leads to much many more volumes. Let's pass that around. That's the tractate on Kedusha. So structurally, there's a Mishnah and there's a Gemara. They're composed into, or they're assembled, non-linearly again, by category of dialogues. Okay, and each of those categories, those folios or tractates, is called a masechta. Right, so we'll say the Masechta Kedushin means the folio on Kedushin, which is Kedushin is about marriage, so it's going to have to deal with marriage in some way. Thematically, and the argument, by the way, is called a machloket. Okay, it's a debate, machloket. Thematically, what happens is there's 2 aspects of the Talmud. Halacha, which comes from the root lalech, meaning a way to go, and Agadah, which means lore or stories. So law and lore. Most people that you will study Talmud with will tell you that what is important is the law and the lore is unimportant. The stories are important. I side in the minority, so that's how I teach it. But I'm a good company. I'm actually sided this way too, so I'm going to get some good company. That the stories are important because the law comes out of stories. What to do comes out of what our stories are. Now, let's say we're talking about, can I move this bottle of water? Back to that argument. This woman has come in and she has said, can I move it more than 6 inches if it's halfway? Okay, it's more than half filled. And we've got Rabbi Karen and Rabbi Orlando, and they're presenting their arguments. All of a sudden, Rabbi Fiona steps up and she says, wait a minute, when I think of water is actually mayim. And we call the Torah mayim chaim. So the question here is not just about water, but the question is, can we move the Torah? And then Rabbi Alex says, wait a minute. The Torah is analogous to our soul, so can I move, if I'm more than half alive, can I still move more than 6 inches? Okay? And it goes on from there. Does that make sense? And these dialogues go on and on and on and on. Eventually, we will come back to the original issue. But like any conversation, it's going on. Another thing to understand is, another thing to understand is that the language of the Talmud is a shorthand. So when we look at a translation, the editor, in this case it's Schottenstein, the people who edited the company who edited it. It's Masor Publishing, Schottenstein family paid for it. The editors have put in words to make the sentences make sense. Okay, it's more poetic and abbreviated language. And often they're talking about something that they're not necessarily talking about. Example. We're having a conversation about marital intimacy. Okay? And a couple of 7-year-olds walk in as we're having this conversation about marital intimacy. I start saying, well, when the painter takes his paintbrush and dips it in the paint. We all know what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Did the 7-year-olds? Apparently not. Right? So there's often that kind of language too, right? Halacha does not literally mean law, even though that's how we always translate it. It actually means a way of going, from the root balachem. Okay? Every Mishnah has a Gemara, with the exception of this, Pirkei Avot. There's no Gemara on this. Someone said this is a manual to a rabbinic manual, how to live life. It is, there's no Gemara on it, but you can buy commentaries that are, 3, 4, 5 volumes. You look at my library, and I think I have 7 different commentaries on this. They're all this thing to this thing, just on Pirkei Avot. Rabbi Beryl Wine did an amazing series of CDs. I think it's 16 CDs of lectures on Pirkei Avot. It's just beautiful. Oh, it's beautiful because Rabbi Wine, I don't know if it's still alive. Rabbi Wine is this amazing, brilliant rabbinic scholar and also a huge businessman, business attorney. So he's really a great speaker, and he's just this brilliant man, and really. So does everyone follow
So
that?
do you recommend to find some good commentary?
If you want. If you want. Typically, we read this between Passover and Shavuot.
Okay.
We also read this in the morning. Those are 2 of the times that we typically read this. Okay? Because you read it over the course of the 30 days of mourning.
Can you tell me when these were all written?
Well, remember, they're written of oral dialogues. So the dialogues might have taken place as far back as 400 before the Common Era, but they're not codified to the 2nd century, after the Common Era. Okay, yeah.
I have one question. It's always just bothered me.
Only one question has bothered you your whole life?
Well, this is one of them.
Say it to
How
him. That's why he was playing God when he was
How can we be
discussing.
certain in the oral tradition that it's been correctly interpreted? Because when you have an eyewitness and another eyewitness and another eyewitness, how do you know?
So there's 2 answers to that. From a cultural anthropological point of view, we know that oral traditions are actually more accurate than written. Because it's not an eyewitness, many people saying the same thing. It's, I'm teaching you to sing this song, and then you're teaching the song again. So that tradition, as an example, that's number 1. But remember, this is not, we know by the 2nd century, this is codified. Right? It's by the 5th century.
Codified means written?
It's written down, and by the 5th century, we've got the Gemara as well, all of this. But the question you're asking is, how do we know that Rabbi Karen was right or Rabbi Orlando was right? The answer is, since they have 2 different stories, traditions that were passed down from their great-great-great-great-grandfathers, we don't. So we argue about it, and that's what the dialogues are.
Okay,
That's why you have the machlok.
all right.
That makes sense.
Makes sense?
Oh, yeah.
Because if everyone, and there's a great law, I love this rule. There's 71 judges in the Sanhedrin. If it was a unanimous decision, it's thrown out.
Huh.
The idea that 71 people cannot agree on anything. They all agree there's corruption going on. Isn't that a brilliant?
Oh,
Isn't that brilliant?
yeah.
Yeah.
If there's a debate and 71 people all say this is right, something's wrong. Right? Because it doesn't matter what it is. So the first piece of Talmud we typically study, and I don't, if I'm teaching with kids, I study this, but not with adults. The first piece is a piece from that has to do with lost and found objects. When is an item? I'm just going to give you the Reader's Digest version to understand how I'm thinking. So the question is, when you find an object, when is it yours, and when are you obligated to report it? To say, hey, whose is this? This isn't mine. Okay. And so it goes through pages of dialogue about this. Okay. If it has a siman, a sign on it, or if it has a name on it, then it's a good guess that even if I found this lighter, but it says this lighter belongs to Orlando Salas, that Orlando's expecting to find it, right? So it's not mine, obviously. If it has great value, let's say this was $1 million lighter, the owner probably has expectations of finding it. And then it goes into this detail about purple wool and all different sorts of things. that depending on the value, depending on the size of the where it was found. So if I found a $100 bill in Dodger Stadium, then it's less likely the owner is anticipating that it's still his, as opposed to if I found a $100 bill here in the town, right? So now you started, the reason this is the first piece we teach children is because it starts to teach children to look at something other than themselves, because what you're really looking at is, does the owner have an expectation of finding it? Well, he found it, it wasn't very valuable, but it was lost on this table.
Right.
Or was very valuable, so it doesn't matter where it was lost. My mother, God rest her soul, lost her engagement ring down some drain. Apparently, it was lost. My father bought her a new one, and they were married for years already. But that didn't change the fact that anywhere we were, if we walked into an antique store or pawn shop, my mother was looking for her engagement ring.
Huh.
Because it was so valuable to her, she never gave up hope of finding it.
Mm.
Now, what does this
She
end
never
up?
found it.
Not to my knowledge, no. So what does this lead us to? Even if you find a lighter in I'll give a specific example. One of my sons, he was younger, so much sweeter. Still sweet, but it was easier to access this with. In TK or E3 or something, comes home and he found this little toy in the sandbox. And he was so excited, found a little car, whatever it was. I said, "Hey, son, what if that car belongs to someone else?" "Oh, but it's little, they won't miss it." "What if it's the last thing their grandmother gave them before grandmother died? That's the only thing they have of their grandmother." So ultimately, nothing is ever really lost, is it?
Mm.
Rabbi Meir, there's a story of Rabbi Meir and his wife Bruria, and their sons die. And Bruria, it's Shabbat when he comes home, and says, "I want to say where my sons are." So he waits, and then she says to her husband, she says, Bruria's a very famous wife of a rabbi who's a rabbi in her own right. And she says, "I have a question. I was given a gift of 2 beautiful emeralds many, many years ago. I've really grown attached to them. But the owner wants them back. What should I do?" The mayor says, "Wife, what you should do, they're not yours, give them back." "Okay." Then she takes them into the room, and the young men are dead. And he starts tearing out his beard, sobbing, crying. She goes, "Husband, remember what you just said to me. They were only on loan to us." Talmud is very, very deep. It's very, very, very deep. But so when the idea of lost and found objects, we teach it as the first thing to children so that they start to look at the world from a different perspective than only their own. Because after you've gone through all the studying, you really go through the pages, you really start to realize it starts to go through you. The question is not how many pages of Talmud we can go through, it's how many pages of Talmud go through us.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you read a page a day, it takes just over 7 years to finish it. It's called Daf Yomi. Okay, just a page being that.
Wow.
If you study that every day, it takes just over 7 years to go through it. So it's pretty serious.
Mm.
And a lot of it's more interesting, a lot of it less interesting, depending on where you are in life and who you are. Okay? But it's very powerful. So we're going to bypass, we did a little bit of Pirkei Avot last week. We're going to go into, did we talk at all about Shema and Hillel last week? I don't know.
I don't think so.
So often you have a machloket and debate between 2 rabbis. And it might not actually be those rabbis. It might have been their students in their school, if that makes sense. But you have this debate. So we're going to turn to the page that says Hillel, 3rd page. And if you look at it, you have the Hebrew, and then you have in dark print what the Hebrew says, and in light print what the editor is saying in order to make it into a full sentence.
Mm-hmm.
So if we look what's marked off on the right-hand side, it says the Gemara cites some other examples of ways that responded to sarcastic or otherwise improper questions. So what the text actually says is, the rabbis taught in a Baraisa, one should always be humble like Hillel, and one not be stern like Shammai. That's what the text actually says in the Hebrew. Editors have done for the translation to make it into easier, as the rabbis taught in the Baraisa, early teaching. One should always strive to be humble and gentle in all his ways like Hillel, and one should not be stern and unyielding like Shema. You guys see how that? Okay, so we're going to use the full sentences. And let's read about Hillel and Shema. So you often have Akiva, you have Eliezer, and Gamaliel, you have Yochanan, and Reish Lakish, you have Shema, you have this conflict. But we're going to learn tonight a little bit about why that conflict is so important. Because remember, if God is infinite, then can any of us have the only opinion? Right? So the machloket is important because the debate allows us to see other viewpoints. And we study what's called chavruta. You study Talmud with people, with friends. Chaver means friend. So that we can, it's not the Talmud, the Talmud brings people together, studying and discussing and arguing about it, and where it goes just naturally in this conversation. And that's really what's so rich and beautiful about it, is that it naturally moves and sparks other conversations and other dialogues. And that's why we study this way. So it's a beautiful way. So let's start to be kind of to start reading where it says the Baraisa illustrates this with a story. Did you find it? Did you get lost?
Yeah, I'm lost.
Right there.
Oh,
Oh, the bottom.
So this is about that. So we're being told you should be humble and gentle and not be stern and unyielding. Okay? By the way, Hillel and Shammai are always arguing. Intellectually, Shammai is usually right, and we usually side with Hillel because he's just nicer and more populist. All right, please continue. Please start. Go
The Baraisa illustrates this with a story. It once happened that two people. Where is it?
Here, made a bet with one another.
Oh, okay, made a bet with one another. They said, whoever goes and provokes Hillel to lose his temper, let him take 400 Zeus as his prize. Thereupon one of them said, I will provoke.
Okay, so we're gonna make a bet. Who can get Hillel to be cranky, right? Who's gonna
needle him.
needle him enough that he's gonna lose his temper, right? Go on, please.
The Baraisa recounts the events that follows. That day, it so happened, it was Friday, the eve of Shabbat, and Hillel was busy washing his hair, in preparation for the Shabbat.
So he's in a bath, right? Hillel's in a bath. Okay, go on.
As he was doing so, this person went and passed by the doorway of his house, calling, Is there a Hillel here? Is there a Hillel here? Hillel put on his cloak and went out to greet that person and said to them, My son, what do you see?
So he gets out of his bath, dries his hair, puts on his robe, his cloak, comes out and says, My son, what do you see? Go on.
The person replied to him, I have a question of you. Hillel said to him, Ask, my son, ask. The person then posed this query, What is it that the heads of Babylonians are so bound?
So round.
So
Sorry
bound.
about the copy quality.
Hillel replied to him, My son, you have asked a truly profound question. The reason because they do not have skillful midwives.
Okay. Now most of us would come out of this, right? Did we do this last week? We didn't do
I
this.
guess we
you
did. I
actually
do
did.
remember.
We did, yeah, we
So
did
most
that.
of us would come out of this and we'd say, Get out of my way, I'm going back to my bath. Okay? He says, I have a question. Go on.
It's
The
okay.
person then went away and waited a while, and then he returned to the front of Hillel's house and called out, Is there a Hillel here? Is there a Hillel?
So he's
here?"
gone back up and he's in his bathtub.
Hillel again put on his cloak and went out to greet the person and said to him, My son, what do you seek? The person replied to him, I have a question to ask of you. Hillel said to him, Ask, my son. The person then asked, Why is it that the eyes of the Tarmodians are especially round? Hillel replied to him, My son, you have asked a profound question. The reason is because they live in sandy terrain.
So they got their eyes around because they're going like this all the time. Okay? And he's still not getting irritated. Go on.
The person then went away and waited a while, and then he returned to Hillel's door and called out, Is there a Hillel here? Is there a Hillel here? Hillel once again put on his cloak and
Which is,
went out
and why
to
does it
greet
say
him.
put on his cloak? Because that means that each time he was back in the bathtub.
And said to him, my son, what do you seek? The person replied to him, I have a question to ask of you. Hillel said to him, ask, my son. The person then asked, why is it that the feet of Africans are so wide? Hillel replied to him, my son, you have asked a profound question. The reason is because they live in swamplands.
How many of us would have been irritated by now?
Oh,
3 times going into the bathroom.
absolutely. What?
Okay?
Having failed to exasperate Hillel with his earlier questions, the person made one last attempt to do so. He said to him, I have a great many questions to ask, and I am fearful that you may become angry with me. Hillel wrapped
Remember, this
himself,
is right before Shabbos, don't forget. Okay.
Hillel wrapped himself in his cloak, sat down in front of him, and said to him, every question you have to ask, feel free to ask. The person then said to him, are you the great Hillel, whom they call the Nasi of
Nasi means the prince.
the Jewish people? Hillel replied, yes. The person then said to him, if it is indeed you, let there be many like you.
But there not be many like you.
Let there not be many like you among the Jewish people. Hillel replied, my son, why do you say such a thing? The person responded, because on your account I have lost $400. And he revealed to Hillel the wager he had made. Hillel responded to him, one should always vigilantly guard his
Right.
disposition so he maintains equanimity in all situations. Hillel is worth your losing on his account $400 and yet another $400, but Hillel will not take offense.
So you have a story, and out of the story comes the law of you to be patient and gentle.
Now we
That's
know
what
where
I
Jewish
believe
humor
that
comes
the
from.
stories are more important. Okay? Okay, then please continue with the next one.
Baresa shows how Hillel's exceptional humility succeeded in bringing others closer to God. The rabbis taught in Baresa, it once happened that a Gentile came before Shammai and said to him, how many Torahs do you Jews have? Shammai replied to him, we have 2, the written Torah and the oral Torah. The Gentile then said to him, as for the Torah that is written, I believe you that it was given by God. But concerning the Torah that is oral, I do not believe you. Convert me to Judaism on condition that you will teach me only the written Torah, i.e., that I shall be bound by only its tenets. Upon hearing this, Shammai berated him for his insolence and sent him away disapprovingly. Afterwards, however, the Gentile came before Hillel with the same request, and Hillel converted him. The Baraisa relates the end of the story. One day, Hillel taught the alphabet to the new convert, saying to him, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, and so on.
So you show the letters A, B, C, D.
But the following day, when the convert came for his next lesson, Hillel reversed the names of the letters for him, teaching him that the letter he had called an Aleph the day before was in reality a Tav, and so on.
So he said A, B, C, D, and then he said Z, Y, X, W. Okay? So, and he's whole different names to the letters. Okay?
Taken aback by the change, the convert said to Hillel, but yesterday you did not recite it to me that way. Hillel replied to him, so you see then, are you not relying upon me to recognize the letters of the alphabet? Rely on me also then about the veracity of the oral law. Oh, smart.
That's smart. You see how it's
Wow.
go on, read the next one too. Because
You twisted it.
yeah, go ahead.
A second narrative again depicts Hillel's interaction with a prospective
This is a
convert.
very, very famous passage.
There was another incident involving a certain Gentile who came before Shammai and said to him, convert me to Judaism on condition that you will teach me the entire Torah while I stand on one foot. Upon hearing these words, Shammai pushed the person away with the ruler he was holding in his
By the way,
hand.
Orlando, that would lead one to think that Shammai might have been some sort of Mason
A ruler.
because
yeah.
he had the right. Come on.
Undeterred, the Gentile came before Hillel and presented him with the same request, and Hillel converted him. Before the conversion, Hillel said to him, that which is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow. This, in a few words, is the entire Torah. All the rest is but an elaboration of this one central point. Now go and learn it.
It's not the golden rule, it's the inverse of the golden rule.
Yeah.
Mm.
The golden here's why. The golden rule says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, which means if I'm a masochist, I get to be sadistic to you. Okay?
Mm.
Or if I worship death, I get to kill you. Not that that might have anything to do in the world in Gaza right now, but it gives you the right. Hillel says, no. Don't do anyone else what you don't want them to do to you.
Yeah.
Okay. Gives you an idea about Hillel and Shammai. Let's turn and go to the page. If you would continue, please. If you could go where it says Yochanan and Reish Lakish, this is the bottom of CF 84. And you see that there's the very next page. It's on the top where it says Yochanan and Reish Lakish. And then where the line is, where it says the Gemara records the story, the relationship between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. The narrative begins before Reish Lakish's rise to eminence. Reish Lakish and Yochanan end up being sparring partners all the time.
Mm-hmm.
They're very, very close. There's a whole theory that it was Brokeback Talmud. They're very, very, very close. But go ahead and read. This is one day. You gotta read out loud.
Oh, I'm I am not. Okay, excuse me. One day, Rabbi Yochanan was swimming in the Jordan River.
And Yochanan was very gorgeous. It's commented how physically beautiful he was. He had long hair down to his tuchus. He was in perfect shape. He was thin, muscular, just a gorgeous specimen. Okay, gorgeous specimen. Right.
Rash, who was then a highwayman, saw him and jumped into the Jordan after him.
Why was he jumping into the Jordan? What do you want to go do? Go on, say it, Fiona.
It was after him.
He thought he was a her.
Oh.
Oh.
And so
The hair.
this is this long hair coming down and so beautiful. So go do what bad guys do. Right? Go ahead.
Rabbi Yochanan, saw this display of vitality and said to him, "Your strength belongs to the Torah." Rabbi Lakish said to him,
Your beauty
belongs to women. Yochanan said, if you repent your ways, I will give you my sister in marriage, who is more beautiful than I.
Ooh.
Lakish accepted this upon himself. Lakish then wanted to return to retrieve his clothes, but was unable to muster the strength to do so.
Why? Because he had given all of his vitality in that moment to Torah. Most of us don't give 100% to anything in our lives. Except maybe our children or grandchildren. But we know when King David begs for forgiveness with 100% of his soul, he's forgiven. When Reish Lakish gives 100%, I'm fully committed to Torah, he doesn't have the strength even to swim back. Okay? It's about giving everything when you make a commitment, really committed. Okay, go on. You pick up Rabbi Yochanan afterwards.
Okay, Rabbi Yochanan afterwards taught him scripture and Mishnah and made him into a great man. The narrative continues. Excuse me. One day, many years later, they were disputing the following point in the study hall. The Mishnah states, the sword and the knife and the hunting spear and the military spear and the hand sickle and the harvesting sickle, at what point are they capable of becoming
Tameh. So here's the question. You're making you're making a knife. Okay. At one point, you're making the knife to butter food. At another point, you're making the knife to go kill an animal or a human being. What point does it become? It's no longer a butter knife; it's now a knife to kill. At what point is that's the question? Okay. That it's now an instrument of war, of violence, as opposed to an instrument of healing, of peace, whatever. Everyone got the question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Go on.
Okay, it is from the time of the completion of their production. And when is the completion of their production? Rabbi Yochanan says, from when the metal utensils are tempered in a furnace. Rabbi Lakish says, from when they are polished with water.
Okay, so Yochanan says, we all agree that when the time of production is done, that's when it's determined, is it a hunting knife or a butter knife? And Yochanan says, well, the time of end of production is when it's tempered in the fire. And basically says, no. It's when the water comes and it's polished. Okay, this is what they're arguing about. Okay, go on.
Rabbi Yochanan said to Rabbi Lakish, a thief knows the tools of his thievery.
What's the problem with that? What did Yochanan just do that's not okay?
He changed the argument.
Worse than that.
Called him a thief.
He was at one time. But you're on the right track. How long you guys been married?
38 years.
You ever screw up? Early on in the marriage. I know he has some the last 37.
Sure.
But early on, did you ever make a mistake?
Yeah, I'll make mistakes, yes.
30 years later, is it a good idea for you to bring up that mistake in a fight?
No,
Good idea or bad idea or really bad idea?
really bad idea.
What did Yochanan just do?
Bring up a really
Brought
bad
up
thing from the past. Okay.
Okay, that's not okay, is it? So let's see what happens. Go on.
Well, but we wouldn't have known that necessarily.
Well, you will. I'm just giving you a heads up to make it easier. Go on, please. Rachel Kish
And when
replied.
is the completion of the production?
What do you know? Rachel Kish replied to him.
Rabbi Yochanan says, from when the metal utensils are tempered in a furnace. Rabbi Lakish says, from when they are polished with water. Yochanan says to Lakish, a thief knows the tools of his thievery. Lakish replied to him, and how have you benefited me? There among the thieves, they called me Rabbi. I was their leader. And here they call me Rabbi. Yochanan said to him, I benefited you. In that I brought you under the wings of the divine.
So he's saying it's fine what I just did because I'm the one who brought you here in the first place. Is it fine what he just did?
No.
Please continue.
Is the simple of the meaning?
No, the next
No,
page.
no,
Next page.
The next page.
Oh, but
It's all a story, but it's teaching us how to act, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is why I side with Haggadah. But I'm telling you, that's the minority opinion, okay? So most rabbis, they'll tell you what's important is how close the meat can be to the dairy on a plate on the same table 3 days later. I find this is more important. Go ahead.
Okay, Rabbi Yochanan says became disheartened because of Rabbi Lakish's response. Reish Lakish's response. Reish Lakish became seriously ill. Rabbi Yochanan's sister, who was Reish Lakish's wife, came before Rabbi Yochanan. She cried and pleaded with him to pray for Reish Lakish's recovery.
So as Reish Lakish became ill because he insulted his teacher in public.
Right. She said to him, act for the sake of my children. Prevent their father from dying. Rabbi Yochanan replied to her with this verse. Leave your orphans. I will sustain
From the
them.
book of Jeremiah. Whenever it's italicized, that means it's a biblical quote. That's from Jeremiah. Go on.
She said, act for the sake of my impending widowhood. He said to her, and let your widows trust be me?
In me.
In me, I'm sorry.
That's okay, so we'll copy it. Again, he's quoting Jeremiah. So she says, pray for him so that he gets better. And he goes, nope. Go on.
So Shimon ben Lakish passed away.
So Reish Lakish dies.
But Rabbi Yochanan grieved after him considerably. The rabbi said, who shall go to bring comfort to his mind? Rabbi Eliezer ben Pedas should, for his scholarship is brilliant. Eliezer ben Pedas went and sat before him. To everything Rabbi Yochanan would say, Rabbi Eliezer told him, we learn a barasa that supports you. Yochanan eventually said to him, you are supposed to be like Bar Lakish. With Bar Lakish, whenever I would say something, he would pour 24
You would pose
pose
24 difficulties.
pose 24 difficulties. Where am I now? 24 difficulties to me, and I would give him 24 solutions. And as a result of the give and take, the subject became clear. However, you constantly say, we learn a Barisha that supports you. Of what use is this? To not, I already know that I have said well.
So in other words, they send Eliezer, and Yochanan says, can't move bottle more than 3 inches. It says you're right. It says you can't move phone more than 4 inches. You're right. You can't move Pirkei Avot more than an inch. You're right. And so Rabbi Yochanan says, well, I need you to tell me right. I know I'm right. Lakish and I, we would dialogue, we would debate, we'd fight, we'd have this machloket, and as a result, we understood more of God because God's infinite. Okay? So what do I need you to tell me when I'm right? I need Lakish. Go on.
Rabbi Yochanan would go about and tear his clothes and would cry and say, where are you, Bar Lakish? Where are you? And he would scream until his sanity wore away from him. The rabbis prayed for mercy on him, and Rabbi Yochanan passed away.
So this tells the beginning and end of Rabbi and Yochanan and Reish Lakish. The Talmud is filled with dialogues between them, the beginning and end.
Hmm.
And we learn from it how to treat people, not to bring up past things in an argument, not to, the dialogue is so important. So, okay? All of those kind of things. Make sense? Let's turn to the next one. All right, so this is from Shabbat. Let's take the Shabbos. So what is this tractate mostly going to be about?
Shabbat.
So we have Sabbath.
Right.
Okay. Let's start to read. Okay? So the question is going to be posed before the court. If someone is sick and their life is in danger, is it permitted to do something that you're not supposed to do?
Yes.
On Shabbat.
Is it permitted to douse a candle?
Yes.
Is it going to affect them? That's the question before the court. Okay. So really, the mission deals with a sick person whose life is in danger, and this, in truth, the Tanakh stated that distinguishing was for the benefit. It's definitely permitted. However, since they needed to state that in the latter part and they don't, the question is also for the sake of symmetry taught in the first part. In other words, are you exempt from doing it? Do you have to do it? Are you allowed to? But what about if it's so that a sick person may fall asleep? One should not extinguish the lamp. One does extinguish it. Is he exempt from having to make an offering, chatas offering, an offering to, because he did something wrong on Shabbat? Okay? Because his life's not really in danger, but it's stopping him from falling asleep. But maybe he's in danger. Okay? And Mar resolves the difficulty because of the sick person who's not in danger. Okay? Now, it says on that page, where it says, in connection with the law set forth in the Mishnah, the Gemara records a question asked of a certain sage. Next.
I don't see.
Yeah.
I
No,
can't
it's
remember
okay.
how to read this.
Do you have a page that looks like this?
No. That's not where we are.
Wow.
Okay, then that would make it difficult to do that. So we'll skip that one. You have one that says temporary injury. You have one. What's the next page on you guys? I will just, on that Shabbat one of the beautiful things about it,
Yes, can you read it?
I'll just explain what ends up happening. The dialogue goes on, and then they say, wait a minute, you're not supposed to extinguish it when you make candle. And then someone says, but it says in the book of Proverbs, observes. The candle, the soul of a human being is the candle flame of God. It is more important to save a divine candle than it is to save a human candle. So it makes the analogy that every time we're talking about candle, we're actually talking about God.
Interesting.
So that goes. All right, so let's go to the page you have. Do you have a page that says Bikur Holim, or go straight to Lavash Mayim?
No,
Yeah, I
let's do it
think-
to that.
Well, I want someone to read this one on Bikur Holim anyway. So it's right there. Yeah, you read from there to there. Bikur Holim means visiting the sick. Do we have laws and rules about how you visit the sick?
Which,
So you don't have it on the head.
So, I think we did.
We do, we have a lot of specific, I got a whole class on how to visit the sick and how not to.
Okay.
Part of it comes from this, so go ahead.
So Rabbi Chaya bar Abba was ill. Rabbi Yochanan went to visit him, and he asked him, "Are these afflictions dear to you?" Rabbi Chaya bar Abba answered him, "Neither they nor their reward." Rabbi Yochanan said to him, "Give me your hand." Rabbi Chaya bar Abba gave him his hand, and Rabbi Yochanan revived him.
So what happens here? Patient is not well. Says, are you attached to the sickness? Patient says, not the sickness nor its reward. Is there a reward to being sick?
I guess
What are some of the
that had
rewards?
Some people's mind.
Get a lot of
You
attention.
get attention, you get taken care of,
Mhm.
Don't have to go to
all
work.
sorts of, we don't do to work
Right.
or school, all sorts of things, right?
Right.
So first step in understanding so that the healing happens is that the patient has to be in a place of saying, okay, I'm not attached to sickness or what I get. Then what does Yochanan do? Heals our hand.
Right.
Does he heal the person? No. Says, okay. And the patient has to then take the hand. Okay? Everyone see that's a modality of how we visit the sick. Please continue.
Rabbi Yochanan was ill. Rabbi Hanina went to visit him and asked him.
Immediately afterwards, now the doctor is now sick.
Oh, this is
Right.
now the doctor?
Well, Yochanan was the rabbi,
Rabbi,
he's the
okay,
healer.
right,
And same
okay,
guy,
right.
same guy who just healed.
Right.
One guy is now sick.
Right.
Okay.
Are these afflictions dear to you? Rabbi Yochanan answered him, "Neither they nor their reward." So Rabbi Hanina said to him, "Give me your hand." And Rabbi Yochanan gave him his hand, and Rabbi Hanina revived him. So same process.
But again, we need outside mirrors to help us. Go on.
Why did Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Hanina's or need Rabbi Hanina's help? Let Rabbi Yochanan revive himself. They said, "A captive cannot release himself from prison. He needs help from someone outside."
Isn't that beautiful?
yeah.
Isn't that a beautiful teaching?
Yeah.
How do you visit the sick? You deal with that all the time, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, I don't think they know that.
I-
My patients are a little oblivious, but grateful nonetheless.
Yeah, and they gotta,
Mhm.
make sense? All right, let's go to,
And that you want to
No,
talk
you
about
can-
it? Okay.
you can
Well,
go.
another incident regarding the suffering. Rabbi Elazar was ill. Rabbi Yochanan went to visit him. He saw that Rabbi Elazar was lying in a dark room. Rabbi Yochanan exposed his arm, and light fell into the room.
that's how beautiful this guy was.
Yeah.
Okay, this guy was hot.
He saw that Rabbi Elazar was crying. Rabbi Yochanan asked him, "Why are you crying? If it is because you did not accumulate as much Torah knowledge as you wanted," but then I don't know, it kind of skips on, and then
No.
but we learned in a Mishnah with regard to sacrifice, both the offering of the one who gives much and the offering of the one who gives little are equally pleasing to God.
Because if you don't study so much, it's okay. You gave a lot or you give a little, still a little or a lot, you still study.
So provided he directs his heart to heaven, accordingly, even though you did not learn as much as you would have liked, since your intentions were pure, there is no reason to cry. And
You see how they flipped it all of a sudden, so it was about charity when it's actually they're talking about healing and talking about learning, and do you guys see how this all kind of comes? Okay.
And if you're crying because of a lack of food, i.e. your dire financial situation, that too is no reason to cry, because not everyone merits 2 tables.
Mhm.
And if you're crying because of your children who died, this is the bone of the 10th son that I lost.
I kept with it.
Yeah.
So as he's saying to him, why are you crying? If you cry for this reason, look, no reason to cry. Cry for this reason, no reason to cry. Cry for this reason, no reason to cry. It's the kind of dialogue we all have with each other, isn't it? Go on.
Rabbi Eliezer said to Rabbi Yochanan, it is on account of this beauty, i.e. the beauty of Rabbi Yochanan, which will rot in the earth, and that I am crying. Wow. Rabbi Yochanan said to him, for this you should certainly cry. And they both cried. In the meantime, Rabbi Yochanan asked him, are these afflictions dear to you? And Rabbi Eliezer said to him, neither they nor their reward. So Rabbi Yochanan said to him, give me your hand. Rabbi Eliezer gave him his hand, and Rabbi Yochanan revived him.
But you see how this in that story there were all these,
Other
well, you don't feel good, why are you not feeling good because of this? Well, that doesn't matter because look over here. That doesn't matter. It's a dialogue. These stories are dialogues. Okay, let's continue. Go ahead, since you're right over here. Go to the page that says on the bottom, Lo Bashamayim Ki. This is one of my very favorite passages that you'll see actually. Well, there's paper on this next to Rabbi Shulchan. I said, Rabbi, I think there's something else going on here. He said, Michael, that's a good idea.
Write a paper on
Write a
it.
paper on it. So I did. So it's published on the 10-page paper because that's what happens.
And where do we get a copy of that?
It's in here.
It's in here. Oh, okay.
So please continue where it says, the following Mishnah alludes to an incident in which a Tana, an old sage, was offended. After quoting the Mishnah, the Gemara relates the incident and how quickly his prayers were answered. Go on. We have learned in a Mishnah.
We've learned there in a Mishnah, if someone cuts sections for an oven and put sand between the sections to cement them together, and the oven then came into contact with tumah,
That's impure.
Rabbi Eliezer declares it tahor, but the sages declare it tamai.
Okay, so here's the question.
Let's talk about
Okay, we're going to go, read the next paragraph and then we'll talk.
And this is the oven of the coiled serpent.
Keep going.
The Gemara explains what is meant by the coiled serpent. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel, it means that they, the sages, surrounded the oven with discussions like this coiled snake, and then declared it susceptible to tumah.
Tamei is impure, tahor is pure. So remember when you were kids and you took a ceramics class and you made it a little bowl, right? And so you'd have these different kind of substrate, clay over here. And over here, it's all coiled together, right? Right? So that's what the oven looks like. Okay? Two different materials cemented together. Got it? Okay. All the rabbis say impure, not okay. Eliezer says no. Tahor. It's pure, it's clean. Now who's Eliezer? Eliezer, we've all heard of Rabbi Akiva, great Rabbi Akiva, right? This great rabbi, we know him or not, that he was this great rabbi, this great Talmudic sage. Tell stories about him, this great leader of the Bar Kokhba revolt, spiritual leader, amazing being. His teacher was Rabbi Eliezer. Okay, so we're talking about a serious guy. Okay, and he's serious enough, he's going to take on the whole assembly now. Okay, please continue. So now we know what the argument is about. The argument is about, is this oven made of two different substances that are cemented together? Is it
Kosher.
Is it kosher? Simply put. Okay, is it fit? All right, please continue.
A Baraisa tells us about the debate surrounding this oven. A Baraisa taught, on that day, Rabbi Eliezer advanced all the arguments in the world to defend his lenient ruling. But the sages did not accept his arguments. Rabbi Eliezer said to them, if the halacha accords with me, let this carob tree prove it. Whereupon the carob tree was uprooted from its place and moved 100 Amos.
yards.
And some
And some say it moved more.
wow. And some say it moved 400 yards. Unconvinced, the sages said to him, "You cannot bring proof from a carob tree."
Okay, so we're arguing, right? And Eliezer says, look, if I'm right, you haven't accepted all my arguments. If I'm right, let that carob tree prove it. Carob tree gets up and moves 100 yards, and all the rabbis say, means nothing to us. We don't care about a carob tree. Go on.
You cannot bring proof from a carob tree. He then said to them, "If the halacha accords with me, let the water canal prove it." Whereupon the water in the water canal flowed backward.
Hmm.
The sages said to him, "You cannot bring proof from a water canal."
Okay, you didn't buy the carob tree. If I'm right, let the water canal prove it. Water runs uphill. We don't accept it.
Huh.
Does that sound familiar these days?
Yeah.
No
He
difference.
then said to them, "If the halacha accords with me, let the walls of the study hall prove it."
So the walls start to fall down, and then what happens quickly as the walls are falling?
Whereupon the walls of the study hall leaned and were about to fall. Immediately Rabbi Teshua rebuked the walls and said to them, if Torah scholars vie with one another in discussions about halacha, what business is it of yours?
Stay up.
Walls, stay out of it.
The walls did not fall out of respect for Rabbi Yeshua, but neither did they right themselves out of respect for Rabbi Eliezer. And they still continue to lean to this day.
Go on.
Rabbi Eliezer then said to the sages, if the halacha accords with me, let heaven prove it. Whereupon a heavenly echo went forth and proclaimed, what argument do you have with Rabbi Eliezer, whom the halacha follows in all places? Upon hearing this, Rabbi Yeshua stood on his feet and declared, the Torah is not in heaven.
Lo bashamayim he, it is not in heaven. Exactly.
I love that music. Right?
That means that's my WhatsApp calls or WhatsApp
That
messages.
cool
about
cue
Israel.
is a good cue.
So let's just recap for a minute. Eliezer says I'm right. They say no, we're not. He says, okay. If I'm right, let the carrot be proved. The carrot walks over. Nope, we don't care. The water runs backwards. We don't care. The walls fall. Doesn't mean anything. God, they all hear the voice of God saying, why are you arguing? Eliezer's right. They say, God, stay out of it. There's very little more fun than teaching this to a bunch of Catholic university students who literally marry them.
Why?
Because their attitude is like, when I say, well, what happens next? They say, well, lightning comes and kills them, right?
Huh.
Okay. Because we're saying, God, out. Okay. You gave the Torah to us. It's not in heaven. It's ours. Get out. And moreover, in Parsha Shoftim, as we studied in the book of Deuteronomy, remember it says you shall go to the judge of your time and place and do what he says left to right. Remember?
Right, yes.
Okay. Think I focused on that verse for no reason? So they're right. Remember that we studied that passage? Okay, please continue.
The Gemara interjects. What is meant by it is not in heaven? Rabbi Yirmiyah said, it means that we pay no heed to a heavenly echo in matters of halacha, for the Torah was already given to man at Mount Sinai. The Gemara relates the rest of Rabbi Yeshua's response to the heavenly echo. We do not pay attention to a heavenly echo because you, God, already wrote in the Torah at Mount Sinai. According to the majority, the matter shall be decided. And since the majority of the sages dispute Rabbi Eliezer's position, his position is rejected in practice.
Keep on.
Following incident dramatically highlights Rabbi Yeshua's assertion. Rabbi Nassan once met Elijah. Rabbi Nassan said to him, what was the Holy One, blessed is he, doing at that moment when Rabbi Yeshua rejected the heavenly signal? Elijah responded to him, he was laughing and saying, my children have prevailed over me. My children have prevailed over me.
Okay. So you've taught your kids something and they use it against you. And they're right. Even though they're wrong, you laugh about it because they're right. You gave the rule, they passed, right?
Mhm.
This is the extent of the passage. When most people are studying this, this is all we will teach. Why? This is what gives the power in the hands of the rabbis. In the book of Deuteronomy, it says you shall go to the judge of your time. Here it's then even confirming that by saying, not only that, but God wants us to judge in our time and place. This is what puts the power in the hands of the rabbis. Okay? Just to understand that, that's why there's a reform movement in Judaism. Because in the 18th century, when the German rabbis decided to say, we want to reform Judaism, do they have, from an Orthodox perspective, do they have a halachic right to do it? Yes. Okay?
Yeah.
Makes sense? Yeah. So this is typically, that's the amount of that you study. Okay? And it proves that, see, all the power should be in the hands of rabbis. It's a little self-serving, but that's typically what you study. We're going to actually study this a little farther to understand what really goes on here, because it gets so much more interesting. Your turn.
A number of drastic developments followed the debate concerning the oven, and the Brisa records them. They said that on that day, the sages collected all the things Rabbi Eliezer had declared tahor
Pure.
and burned them in fire in his presence. And they voted on him and excommunicated him. They said, "Who will go and inform him?"
So let's be clear. They all disagreed with him. They won, and not only did they say that your opinion doesn't matter, they validated every judgment that he ever did.
Wow.
Anything he said was good, they said not anymore. You said it was clean and pure? Nope, not anymore, and we're excommunicating you. Please, what's called Karen. Go on.
I think that says halacha.
He said, who will go and
Who-
Yeah, yeah.
Rabbi Akiva said.
Okay, thank you. Rabbi Akiva said to them, "I will go, and for I am concerned with perhaps an unfit person will go and inform him and bring about the destruction of the entire world." What did Rabbi Akiva do to inform Rabbi Eliezer?
So his dad tells teacher, you've been excommunicated. And every one of your decisions has been overturned. So how you are dead to us.
And oh, by the way, that if I don't do this, the world may end. If that message
someone-
isn't communicated
Wrong,
properly.
because he is that mystical. He's this great mystic, powerful rabbi who's so. And look, he's arguing against the whole assembly. And just to give you an idea of who he is, a tree moved, the water ran backwards, walls fell down, and God's voice talked to everybody. This is a macher in the spiritual universe, however you want to phrase it, right? So Akiva wants to, okay, we got to be gentle how we let Eliezer know what's going on. So he goes, how's he going to do it? Please continue.
He dressed in black clothing and cloaked himself in black and sat before Rabbi Eliezer at a distance of 4 yards.
Why? When do you do that?
You think you're going to get
in death.
So
when you think that they're going to get angry and hit you?
well, that could be when they're angry. What'd you say?
In death.
You don't get, someone dies.
Mhm.
You don't go near the corpse.
Unless you're
Unless you're one of the Haradisha.
right.
Right, okay? So he's now treating Eliezer as a corpse. Launch.
Rabbi Eliezer said to him, "Akiva, why is today different from other days? Why are you sitting so far away from me today?" Rabbi Akiva replied to him, "My teacher, it seems to me that your colleagues are removed from you." Upon hearing this, Rabbi Eliezer too tore his garments and removed his shoes and slid off his chair and sat on the ground.
When do we sit on the ground?
Shiva, yeah.
Okay, right? He's sitting shiva for himself. Yeah, go on.
Tears flowed from his eyes. At that time, the world was smitten. A third of the world's olives, a third of its wheat, and a third of its barley became ruined. And some say, even dough already in a woman's hands became spoiled.
Okay. The guy was Akiva. All right, wait, let's see if you can continue with it. No, you know what? Karen, you go next. Go on.
The Gemara cites another Barisa that describes the aftermath of that day. A Barisa taught a great blow occurred on that day. For every place on which Rabbi Eliezer set his eyes went up in flames. And it even happened that Rabban Gamliel, the Nasi, was
Rabbi Gamaliel was the Nasi. He was the head of the Sanhedrin of the assembly.
was coming in a boat, and a gale threatened to drown him. He said, "It seems to me that this is only because of Rabbi Eliezer ben..."
Organos.
Thank you. Rabbi Gamliel stood on his feet and said, "Master of the universe, It is well known to you that I did not do this, i.e., order Rabbi Eliezer's excommunication for my own honor or for the honor of my father's household, but for your honor, so that disputes not proliferate in Israel. Whereupon the sea subsided from its raging. The Gemara records another consequence of Rabbi Eliezer's excommunication. Ima Shalom, the wife of Rabbi Eliezer, was the sister of Rabban Gamliel. From that incident in which Rabban Gamliel excommunicated Rabbi Eliezer onwards, she did not let Rabbi Eliezer fall on his face, i.e., recite the Tachanun.
Tachanun supplication, which it also includes may I speak of you.
Okay.
It basically made karma happen. That kind of thing. Go on.
One day she thought that it was Rosh Chodesh when the Tachanun supplication is not recited, but she had confused a full month with a deficient one. There are those who say that a poor person came and stood at the door as Rabbi Eliezer was about to recite the Tachanun supplication, and she took bread out to him. Either way, she afterwards found Rabbi Eliezer falling on his face in the recitation of Tachanun. She said to him, "Get up, you are killing my brother." And this is the oven of the cooled serpent.
What happened? You killed my brother. No, go on. Meanwhile, an announcement went forth from the house of Rabbi Gamliel. Do you guys not have that page?
Mhm.
Yes, we
Yeah.
do.
Okay.
Oh, thank you. Meanwhile, an announcement went forth from the house of Rabban Gamliel stating that he had died. Rabbi Eliezer said to his wife, "How did you know about Rabban Gamliel's death?" She said to him, "I have received such a tradition from the house of my grandfather, King David. All the gates of heaven are locked except for the gates of wrongdoing."
So, what happens? There's an argument about an oven. Big argument. Eliezer brings a lot of miracles. They don't care. Why do they not care to excommunicate him? Not only do they excommunicate him, but a storm almost kills Gamaliel. Gamaliel says, "God, look, you know, I didn't make this decision for my glory or my benefit to say I'm more powerful, I'm more right. I did it to stop the proliferation of arguments in Israel, among Israel." The storm stops. And then Gamaliel even dies. Thinking, there's something more going on than an oven, isn't there? Does it sound like this is about an oven?
No.
Greatest stage of his time. Excommunicated. World gets destroyed, parts of it. Miracles happen. And all of it is about an oven? Or is there something else going on? What do you think? What's your gut tell you?
Oh, there's definitely something else going on.
But the text says what the text says, right?
Mhm.
So it must just be about an oven. And the teaching here is A, that the power's in the hands of the rabbis. And B, that you don't do onah, you don't do wrongdoing, you don't speak ill of people, you don't do the wrong thing. Okay? But did your gut tell you something else is going on too? Okay? So, remember when we first started studying about Torah, we said you gotta look at the verses before and after to understand them at a deeper level. Remember that? Let's go back.
Okay.
Let's go back to the paragraph right before, on the page that says Lo Bashamayim Hi. Paragraph right before, which says, and Rabbi Helbo said, Rabbi Helbo said a person must always be careful about his wife's honor your wives in order that you may become wealthy. So that right before it's talking about marriage, isn't it? Let's go to the after Gamaliel dies. Of course, Bryce discusses the severity of wronging a convert. Rabbi Tana Bryce is someone who verbally wrongs a convert, transgresses three prohibitions. So about the person who's not Jewish, who's not born Jewish. What is the biggest concern in our Talmudic sages' time, the Greco-Roman times? What's their biggest concern? It's the same concern we have today as parents, as Jews. What's our biggest threat to Judaism?
Assimilation.
What's it about?
Assimilation.
Salvation.
Mm.
Right? Isn't that the threat always?
Mhm.
Still is.
Yeah.
So what if, and there's a whole article written by some guy afterwards. What if they're looking at the world differently? Not of them. It's two people who are cemented together because they love each other. But they don't belong together.
Ah,
Whoa.
What if, and you won't find out, that article was the first article with this concept, so as far as we know. But what if, because we look at before and after, right? What if what they're saying is, Eliezer is saying, look, if two people love each other, God's in a relationship. And God's telling you he's in a relationship. And Gamaliel's saying, or initiative, is simply saying, we don't care. Because if you start determining who is Jewish, who's not, who can you marry, who can you not, who's really a convert, who's not a convert, how are you going to, so what's going to happen? You're going to have fights. What do we have today? Do you know if you're converted in the United States, it does not count as conversion in Israel?
I do know that.
Right? Does not give you the law of return to go to Israel.
Hmm.
The right of return. Okay? Doesn't matter what the conversion is. You can be registered, but you're not, it does not give you the right of return. At what point did you convert?
No.
I said that because you just said what you said.
Yes.
Ever gotten grief because someone says it wasn't the right type of conversion? Or it wasn't good enough, or it wasn't whatever, or called a convert as opposed, you know, I never, it's, when someone says to tell me they convert, I don't even know because it never occurs to me. So,
Not directly, but I do remember a few years ago I was on a flight going from New York to Toronto, and I ended up sitting near a young man who was taking one of the Rebbe's kittles to a wedding, and he was busy trying to say you should. He was a Chabad person, of course. He said I should keep following and probably do a deeper conversion in order to,
not just Jewish.
yes, something like that.
So I was once up at I was at a funeral in San Francisco, and I was talking with her many years ago, and she said that her husband had converted. I said, you know, that's really fabulous because that's a lot. Oh no, he didn't have to go through it anymore. Well, it's nothing else. It's the circumcision. Oh, he didn't have to get circumcised. I understand, but drawing, because if you are circumcised, you don't get circumcised again.
You should pinprick.
You draw 3 drops of blood.
Yeah.
I said, that's no, he didn't have to do that. So the rabbi converted him, and he didn't have to do any of those things.
Mm.
Did I tell you guys the story about a wedding that I once didn't do?
No.
Okay, because the problem is I'm so old, I don't remember what stories I told in my head. So you understand, a wedding, when you do big weddings, it leads to more big weddings, so it's good business, right?
Right.
When you do weddings that are in 6 figures or more, it leads to more weddings that are in 6 figures or more. It's a good thing. So there was a wedding that was happening, and this is the scenario. There's a bride and a groom. The groom has gone through an Orthodox conversion in Crown Heights.
Mm.
Okay? Many years in Orthodox conversion in Crown Heights. The bride, her birth father had been out of the picture since she was 2. She had a birth mother and a stepfather who had raised her. Okay? Who was very, very wealthy. Birth father was not. About a year or 2 before the wedding, the birth father had gotten involved in the bride's life. Okay, so she's back, very happy. She's got a father, so on. Okay. And he keeps wanting to say, do this, do that, do this, do that to her. He wants this, he wants that. He wanted to bring in a cantor from Israel, major guy. You got to do this. Fine, you got your rabbi, but you got to do this. Actually, I asked Nate, who is this guy? He goes, Michael, this is the biggest deal in the world. Literally, I don't remember his name. The biggest, Muck cantor, most expensive cantor in the world, who's going to fly in from Israel. So the birth father tells the bride she has to do that. The bride then manipulates the mother, you have to do that. The mother then manipulates the stepfather. You have to
Oh,
do this.
geez.
Oh, by the way, the mother and the stepfather have 2 sons together. So younger half brothers. Everyone with me on the story. And he keeps doing this. We need to have the men and women separate because he has some Orthodox people he wants to be in business with that he's inviting to the wedding.
Oh.
Understand, this guy went to religious school when he was 7, so he knows all about Judaism. Because remember, in a land of blind men, the one-eyed man is king.
Yeah.
And I'm, helping through all this, and now he wants to walk down with his daughter, not the man who raised her, and he wants all the women to have their shoulders covered, so they need to provide shawls for everybody. And the bride calls me and she doesn't know what to do. I said, look, I'm going to talk to the guy. He's just Meshuggah. I'll talk to him. We live on the west side. I'm outside smoking a cigar and I'm going to talk to this guy. Walking in our backyard. I'm talking to him and I said, look, we start talking about this. He goes, Rabbi, the groom's not even Jewish. I said, wait a minute, I thought he went through an Orthodox conversion in New York. Oh, he did, but he's not Jewish. I mean, he's a convert. And I control myself and I say, look, I can't tell you what law is most important in the Torah. I can tell you the most repeated law is to treat the stranger with respect and caring, because that's a choice as opposed to you were just born into it. And of course, his Jew even taught that the Messiah will be the son of a convert. And we give respect to that. Rabbi, I know we say this, but this is just you and me talking. You and I both know he's not a Jew. What spewed out of my mouth at an extremely large volume, and I have a large voice, made Allison come running outside because there was a lot of 4 letters in each of these words. Because this pissed me off. Big time. Okay. So I said, I'm going to call the daughter up. And I said, you need to talk to your husband and tell him about this. And she goes, no, I don't want to cause problems. I said, you don't want to cause problems? There are problems. If you're not going to talk to your fiance about it, that's just something with your relationship. I can't do it. This is 2 weeks before the wedding. So I'm sorry, but I will not do this wedding if you're not going to talk to your husband about this. Okay. She goes, well, you have to. I said, no, I'm not going to get involved in this craziness. If you're letting your birth father get between you and your husband, I'm out. Okay. Fast forward 2 weeks, they get married at Shutters. Instead of I've been to Shutters. Very expensive hotel on the beach. $250,000. And it's next to another very beautiful hotel on the beach where a lot of them are staying. So they get married on a Saturday. Sunday there's going to be brunch. Sunday they can't find the stepfather, and so they're looking for him in different places to see where he is. And one of their sons finds him in bed with the mother's best friend.
With the mother's what?
Holy.
You knew he was going to act out. Come on, he's paying for the whole thing. You knew he was going to act out.
Oh my God.
Point being, what is going on here? What if the dialogue is about who is Jewish, who is not Jewish? Who can you marry, who can you not marry? And Eliezer is saying, if 2 people love each other, that's good. That's pure. Go on. And the son is saying, no, it's not. Because you're looking at it from the heavenly realm. We're looking at it from the earthly realm. And to just accept that is going to cause disputes in Israel. Okay? Now that flows a lot better for me because I just can't buy that all this death is happening over enough.
Right.
You can read the article. Yeah. So, but it gives you an idea of what's going on with Talmud. It's powerful, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the stories on the law, they're all there, but you've got to explore it. It's got to be explored and understood. How we practice Judaism is not the Judaism that is taught in the Bible. It's the Judaism that is taught in the Talmud. Because many of the biblical laws we can't even practice Almost 600 of them we can't even practice. There's only 20 some that we can actually practice the way it's described exactly in the Torah, one of which is Sukkot.
What do you mean? Why can't they be practiced?
You don't have a temple, you don't have sacrifices, you don't have. Excuse me. So,
Times have changed and.
but this is the root. Now, from this will come after this codes and where Shuvot responses and everything else. But this, without telling that, this is why. And up until, I don't know if it's still true, but up until recently, you could become a Reform rabbi at Hebrew Union College and never studied Talmud. I don't know how you can be a rabbi and not have studied this, and to whatever extent. But do you see why now I believe this is exciting stuff? Okay? And how does the dialogue happen? I was on a plane to Toronto. Right? Comes into the dialogue because we all have our personal experiences. We all have our own experiences. And so that adds to the dialogue of what Talmud is. Okay? So we were reading some Pirkei Avot last week.
So what is this book though? How is that different than the Talmud?
It's part of Talmud, but it's a Mishnah with no Gemara.
Okay.
Okay? We went over a little bit last week. I do want to read one line that I did not read last week because it's better, it's more fun to read when we read it together. And it just gives you an idea of things. You know, this is this that tells us that the world is based on the Word of God, on the tripod of Avodagim, of Torah, Avodagim, requesting the Word of God, acts of loving kindness and joyous labor. But when you serve a judge and act as a lawyer, the litigants examined before you consider them both as guilty. When they are dismissed from you, consider them both as innocent, provided they accept the judgment. I'm going to let you read, because it's so much more fun when a woman reads this. Chapter 1, right there at the top. Remembers the words of Talmud, or Mishnah, please do not throw anything at me. Go on.
Yosei ben Yochanan, leader of Jerusalem, says, "Let your house be open wide. Treat the poor as members of your household.
Those are good things, right? Okay, go on.
And do not converse excessively with a woman." They said this even about.
Isn't this better when she's reading it than if I was?
She knew I would laugh. They said this even about one's own wife. Surely it applies to another's wife.
Don't call me Shirley. Go ahead.
Consequently, the sages said, anyone who converses excessively with a woman causes evil to himself, neglects Torah's study, and will eventually inherit
Bad places, go ahead.
Okay. Yehoshu ben blah.
I think that's the end of the
Oh, okay.
right? And then it goes to number 6, right?
Yeah.
So are we
Okay.
going to interpret that?
So, first of all, how many?
Are we going to interpret excessive conversation as becoming more than just having a conversation?
Take it the way it says. First of all, how do you find that to be sexist?
Could be, but
Honestly, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, it could be.
Different times.
No? Today.
Today?
Today.
well, today, yes, but depends on if you're just saying strict words like "don't talk." I know he's gonna. I mean,
It's 1-5.
just
Shut up, boy.
conversing, but we know that like an oven wasn't an oven.
No, let's just take it with words. Let's just take
Well,
it with
maybe
words.
you could take it from the point of view that talking excessively to woman will just get you in trouble.
There you go. Now, let's get honest.
From a man.
Any man conversing with a woman excessively, even his wife, there's always going to, men are men. See, I didn't say men are pigs, I just said men are men. Okay? So I'm gonna look at the 2 other men sitting, 3 other men, Orlando as well. Let's be honest. A man talking excessively with a woman leads to dancing. Do you guys know the story of dancing? You know the story of dancing? The rabbi said to the young married couple, you can do anything, you can't dance. You can't dance together, you're not allowed to dance together. That's the Jewish law. Paul says, wait. take off? Oh, like gesund, you're commanded to. Can we bring in lingerie? Enjoy yourself. Can we play pirate and slave girl and swing from chandeliers? God bless you. Enjoy yourself. Can we make love standing up in the kitchen? No. Why? It could lead to dancing.
Yes, I've heard that.
See, okay. You must have heard that. Yes. Right?
Mm.
The reality is, every meeting I took at Loyola, I had an office. I never took a meeting with a student in an office. Not once.
Mm.
I always did it in a public coffee place.
Smart.
I know what you mean.
And this is pre-woke generation, etc. stuff, right? Why?
Perception.
Perception.
And smartness. First week of every class, Allison came into class. I forgot something she had to bring into class. Why? So they saw I was married to a beautiful woman I was in love with. So I became Uncle Rabbi and Aunt Allison to these students as opposed to.
Yeah.
So I was the only guy, and that includes the priests in the theology department, who never got hit on by a student. With one exception, actually. I was teaching a class in ethics and film. And there was a senior. She always sit in the first row, and she would always wear a very short skirt and high heels and nothing underneath.
Ooh.
And yes, I'm sure. Okay. And about 3 weeks into the class, which was a nice student, right? She, I get this email, Rabbi, can we discuss privately? Are you willing to get me in this class so I can go to law school? Is there some time you and I can talk privately about what I need to do? Which I immediately showed to my friends because I just started laughing. And I emailed her back. Absolutely. I can tell you what you need to do. You need to get really good grades on your exams and do a great research paper. She started coming to class from then on in sweatpants. Okay? You take yourself out of the equation of putting yourself in that position.
Yeah.
Because anyone can be flattered or whatever else, and that conversation can lead
To dancing.
to dancing.
Yeah.
Dancing. No dancing. No dancing.
No dancing.
Right? So now looking at that, well, you know what? I love having conversation with my wife too. And when my wife and I just get to have private conversation, it generally, hopefully, leads to something.
Dancing.
Dancing.
Dancing. Dancing. And it's right. Isn't that the truth though? So is it really a sexist statement or is it just being honest?
Be honest. That's really honest.
Pretty right on.
It really is, because let's be honest, women are much more in control than men.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We all agree with that?
Mm.
Yeah?
In fact, women
Well, and that
control
goes
the
back
situation.
to all the teachings. I mean, hence
They do.
part of the reason
They
for
do.
men
Sometimes.
and women being separate and
Well,
having the mahitza.
It was a
and all
normal
that.
relationship.
Also,
They say, yep.
men don't get distracted, right? So
Men
I only use that as a,
They say women don't get distracted, but you
isn't
know.
that? So I only use that as a, again, the wisdom found in the Mishnah, the Gemara, and the Talmud is beautiful and rich like the stories. It's simplistic and proverbial and wonderful. It's legalese, and it's really understands human nature. Because remember something, if you become a member of the assembly, excuse me, one of the 71 rabbis, because you've clerked for a bunch of other ones. And there's each, it's like the Supreme Court, they each have their clerks.
Mhm.
And then eventually one may raise a hand coming back to be in the Supreme Court.
Mm.
Right? I think most of the people, traditionally, I don't know if it's true now, but traditionally most of the people on the Supreme Court had clerked at one point or another for Supreme Court justice, right?
Yeah.
In law school.
Yeah.
It's pretty accurate, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true right now.
Up until recently.
Yeah.
but that was the case, right? So so remember that if you're a clerk or if you're a justice, and if you're a rabbi who's one of the judges or one of the ones working with him, your life is about that. You don't have to worry about your mortgage or your car payment, or everything's taken care of by the community.
Mm.
You do that for a few generations, you're gonna have serious insight and wisdom, and that's what's in Talmud.
Mm.
That's the beauty and the richness. It just keeps going. And it doesn't matter if it's analogies of a candle to a soul, of a lost item. It doesn't matter about if it's an oven or if it's about being humble. doesn't matter, the topic matters. And everything's covered in Talmud. There's a class I teach every year, year and a half. I only teach it for men. It's the one class I will never teach to women. It's a class on marital intimacy. But I often get emails from the wives afterwards saying, thank you. Their husbands came home frisky. Because the Talmud, it's part of life, it's part of humanity. And the Talmud is extremely specific. Do this, don't do this, don't do this, do this, this will do this, do this. It's triple X rated. It's just inappropriate for me to teach to women. I won't do it. For a lot of reasons, including I don't need someone to come up and say, guess what I learned from my rabbi? You can imagine it about intimacy. It's discussed very specifically in Talmud. You want to talk about dreams and dream interpretation? Pages and pages about it in Talmud. You want to talk about money management? In Talmud. Go ahead.
What period of time was this written, and how many rabbis are in that?
Centuries.
Mm.
I don't know how many hundreds or dozens of rabbis actually.
But hundreds.
I would think hundreds, certainly
Okay.
dozens, if not. I actually don't know how many rabbis. It's codified over a period of 100, 150 years, but it goes back to dialogues for longer than that. It's been a few hundred years.
Hmm.
It's pretty, it pulls from different things, and it's not always pulling. Just because it says Shammai, it may not have been Shammai, maybe it's from the school of Shammai, the school of Hillel. It's attributed to Shammai or attributed to Hillel. It is the essence in many ways of Judaism.
Mm-hmm.
Because it takes that written Torah and it explores it and expands upon it. So it's extremely powerful, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And there are great little one-liners. One of my favorite. Don't judge by a flask. Judge by what's inside.
So don't judge a book by its
Don't
cover.
judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
Do not do it to anyone else what you don't want them to do to you. That is the entire Torah. The rest is commentary. Now go do it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those kind of little quotes.
Mhm.
If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? If I'm only for myself, what am I? If not now, when? This is kind of tall. And it's so rich. And again, we're not, what we're doing in this series of classes is going over the sea of Judaism and going a little bit into a lot of different places. But you can spend a lifetime on this. Right? And it's so beautiful and so rich. And, as I say, I had no love for it, and I have great love for it now.
So is this discussed in Saturday services? When is this discussed?
All the time in everything we
All the
do.
time?
So here's my belief. Our community is not so observant. Let me phrase it. I don't think anyone cares. We do a service, let's say it was sermon, right? I don't think anyone really cares that the teaching came from Masechet Bava Metzia 59. Okay, sometimes I already tell Talmud story. But it's to study, it's to learn. And as I say, when we're mourning, we do it. When we're Passover and Shavuot, we do it. But it's always worth studying, and and you study it together because it in itself is a form of service. Okay. Remember something in Hebrew. Talmud is based on the word lilmod, lomed. Lomed meaning to study, also meaning to teach. So, every letter in Hebrew, when you score a Torah scroll, and it's scored with like an X-Acto knife kind of thing, there's a line, and the letters either are on top of the line, or they hang from the line. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So hang like that, with one exception. There's one letter that is above, through, and below. Is the letter Lamed,
Mm-hmm.
which, like Lomed, see it's the same, right? Such an O instead of an A. Lamed. Why? Because it's the one thing study connects the highest of worlds all the way through. So when we study, it's considered a holy practice. It's something we gain benefit from in this world and in the next. It can't be taken away. So it's so, that's just a teaching just from the letter. It's so powerful. Talmud, when we study it, is in itself a prayerful action, a spiritual process. And it teaches us to think differently. The reason that so many, traditionally Jews would become great lawyers is they learn Talmud as kids. They learn to think differently, don't they?
Yeah.
Mm.
And psychotherapists.
Yep.
Psychologists.
Because what were these rabbis?
Right.
Lawyers, judges, therapists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now you've now experienced what I love Talmud. And worth studying. And if you want a book, there's a great beginning book called Every Man's Talmud.
Oh.
What's great about Every Man's Talmud, I'm just blanking on the author's name, but one of the things that's really great about it is it's split up not by Masechta, not by the folio. It's split up by topics. So if you want to know what the Talmud says about angels and angelology and demons, it's got a few pages. You want to know what it says about dreams, it's got a few pages here. You want to know what it says about this or kashrut or whatever it is. It's just got a couple of pages. Just see if that's my wife or someone text me for the minutes. So does that help you a little bit in the whole process?
Exploding.
So isn't that great though?
Yeah.
It's not exploding in a bad way, right?
Right.
So Karen, how do you now? It flows, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
You gotta not. Where we get stuck is we want to go A to B to C because that's how Western culture teaches you to think. This isn't. This isn't playing checkers. This is playing three-dimensional chess.
Mm.
It's not playing tic-tac-toe. It's playing Go.
Ah,
Okay. So now you know a good place to go into the holidays from. Fun? Was this fun?
Yes.
Yeah.
I love this stuff.
Mm.
And you can take these home and you can read about or my take on this. But
Do you want to read your take on it?
you might take on it. Oh, I go into it. Even the idea that I think I even explored about the idea that says that dough in a woman's hand is spoiled, or that it actually corresponds to pregnant women miscarrying. So, so that's where we are. We're on for the night. And